Imagine this. Robinhood builds their own blockchain, makes over $800,000 in revenue, and Ethereum, the so-called settlement layer that secures the entire thing, walks away with just $1,538. $1,538. That's not a typo. That's what actually happened. And it's forcing a very uncomfortable question about Ethereum's future. My name is Newell, and welcome back to the Signal and Noise podcast. Make sure you are subscribed so that you don't miss our unbiased, non-emotional breakdowns and analysis. Watch till the end of this video for a special signal. Robinhood Chain, the new app chain built on Arbitrum, has been the buzz of crypto communities. Since it launched, the chain has generated roughly $816,000 in total revenue. Arbitrum, as the middleware, takes about 10%, around $80,000. Ethereum's Layer 1, it received just $1,538 for providing the final settlement and security. That works out to Ethereum capturing roughly 0.15% of the total revenue. Robinhood keeps almost 90%. The post calls this the cleanest case study of what's happening to Ethereum's economics. And honestly, the numbers are hard to ignore. Here's how this is structured in plain English. Robinhood didn't just deploy a random smart contract. They launched their own dedicated chain, what we call an app chain. It runs on Arbitrum's technology, which gives them customization and control. They get to be the landlord instead of renting space on someone else's chain. When users trade or do whatever on Robinhood Chain, fees are collected. Arbitrum takes its cut as the infrastructure provider. Then a tiny sliver of that activity eventually settles back to Ethereum's base layer for final security and data availability. That's why Ethereum only saw $1,538. It's not that nobody's using the chain, it's that the economics are flowing upward through the stack, and very little is trickling all the way down to L1 right now. Now, if your thesis on Ethereum has always been ETH is digital money and the ultimate settlement layer, this is actually pretty bullish. Robinhood, a massive regulated Wall Street player, chose to build here instead of on Solana, Sui, or any other monolithic chain. They wanted the security guarantees and the ability to customize their stack without giving up decentralization. That's Ethereum winning on merit. More activity on L2s means more demand for ETH as collateral, more staking, more network effects, and more of that Lindy effect. The idea that the longer something survives, the more trustworthy it becomes. When big institutions start moving real volume onto Ethereum's security layer, even if the direct fees are small today, it strengthens ETH's position as the backbone. Over time, as tokenized stocks, RWAs, and serious financial products grow on these chains, the aggregate demand for Ethereum's security should compound. But here's the other side, and this is where it gets uncomfortable. If you believe Ethereum should act like a revenue-generating asset, like the oil or toll road of crypto, then these numbers look terrible. Ethereum is providing the most valuable part of the stack and capturing almost nothing from it. Arbitrum is taking 10 times more than Ethereum, despite sitting one layer above. The post suggests a healthier split might be something like 75% to Robinhood, 10% to Arbitrum, and 15% to Ethereum. Right now, it's nowhere close to that. Critics argue this shows Ethereum is selling its most valuable service at marginal cost. If this model scales to dozens or hundreds of institutional chains, where does the real value accrual to ETH actually come from? Here's the part that often gets missed. This isn't some failure of Ethereum's economics. This is what early L2 scaling was designed to look like. Ethereum deliberately made data availability and settlement extremely cheap through upgrades like proto-danksharding. The whole point was to allow massive throughput without destroying usability or decentralization. If fees on L1 were still high, institutions like Robinhood would never have built here in the first place. $816,000 in total revenue on a brand new chain is still tiny. This is like judging Amazon's entire future based on AWS usage from one small startup in month one. As volume grows, especially with tokenized equities and real-world assets, the indirect value to Ethereum compounds. Through more ETH being used as collateral, more staking demand, and more burn pressure during periods of high activity across the ecosystem. Robinhood choosing Ethereum stack is probably very typical of how serious Wall Street players will approach this. They don't want to be renters on a monolithic chain where they have limited control. They want customization, regulatory clarity, and the strongest possible security guarantees. Ethereum's modular approach gives them that. Monolithic L1s generally don't. So in that sense, this is bullish for Ethereum's long-term positioning. But it does highlight that direct L1 fee revenue might remain a smaller part of the story than many expected a few years ago. The current split looks lopsided if you're only looking at direct revenue. But Ethereum's bet was never just about capturing a big percentage of every L2 transaction. It was about becoming the default settlement and security layer that serious players build on top of. Robinhood building here is validation of that thesis. The real question going forward is whether activity across all these L2s eventually creates enough demand for Ethereum's security and ETH itself to make the economics work at scale. What do you think? Is this the beginning of Ethereum's value accrual problem, or is it just early-stage growing pains? Drop your take in the comments. If you want more breakdowns like this on how institutions are actually building on crypto, subscribe and hit the bell. Next video, we're looking at another major player moving into the Ethereum ecosystem. This is the Signal and Noise podcast. Focus on the data, stay sharp, stay focused.